Hi everyone, it's Janet. Just hoping that you are all well and getting on with your schoolwork and everything else in life. Today's after school project is a crayon splatter art, which we're going to complete today in approximately 20 to 25 minutes. Helpful if you have an adult here. We do have some crayon melting and we need to peel the labels off our crayons to complete this project today. So if you have an adult with you, wonderful. If not, please wait for an adult to be there. So what we're going to do is actually take a picture or some clip art, cut it out, what you want to be the main focus of your picture today. We're going to tape it down, and then we are going to do some splatter drip art with melted crayons to create the background on our pictures. Once we are done and the crayons are cooled onto our canvas, wood, or cardboard, whatever we're using today, we will lift the picture off and we will actually fill in the shape with either black or a really nice complementary paint to your crayon color. So to get started, our list of materials today: a canvas like I showed you, some cardboard. I'm actually going to try wood today with my project. Newspaper for our work area, we definitely need that. A heat gun, which is what you would use to thaw out your water pipes if they freeze. Or you can use a hair dryer, which is probably it's safer to use and more likely to have one of these at your house. You're also going to need a pair of scissors, Sharpie marker, tape. You can either use duct tape or clear regular tape. I like the duct tape because it sticks a bit better, especially if you're using a canvas. Also, when we're using the heat gun and the hair dryer, it's forcing air down. It tends to lift up the edges of our picture, and it can also pull the clear tape right off whatever you're working on, and then you'll end up with some paint inside of your shape. You're also going to need some black craft paint or a complementary color, paintbrush, and an empty clean yogurt cup if you decide to pour the paint into a cup to paint out of instead of using the bottle, which is what I normally do. In addition to that, I recommend 4 brightly colored crayons. If you use more than 4, when you're melting them, they tend to melt and run into each other. The more colors you have, the more likely you'll get the color brown, which isn't quite as sharp. If you're going to do a real background, which is like maybe blue for the sky and a little bit of green for the grass, you might go with a few more colors as long as you try not to mix them too badly. You're also going to need a picture, and this is perfect for our animal science 4-H members. If they have a picture of their favorite cow, cat, dog, chicken, sheep, pig, whatever you may have, definitely good to use that. Usually I print out pictures on 8 by 10, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, but 8 by 10 picture to put into the middle. I also use an 11 by 14 canvas. This is a 12 by 12 piece of wood, so we'll see how that goes. So the first step is to get your picture cut out and then have it taped onto your board or your cardboard or your mat. So we'll get to work on cutting out our shape. When you do choose pictures, try to choose pictures that are easier to cut out, may not have a lot of fine detail. That's a little bit harder to cut out and to keep taped down. So we'll get to work on this and then we'll get on to the next step. All right, once we have our shape cut out of our paper, what we're going to do is turn it over on the back, so the back side is up. We're going to take some tape, cut off small pieces, and we're actually going to make little tape rolls to stick to the back. We want to tape our picture to the board, but we don't want to have the tape on the outside edges so that the crayon will actually hit the board and work really well. Don't stick your duct tape together like I just did, which is real easy to do. That's why tape dispenser works really, really well here. So what you're going to do is just take your tape, fold one edge over, and make a little tape roll. So it's a little sticky roll. And you're just going to stick your little sticky rolls all over the back, making sure all of your edges are taped down really well. Once you have the back of your shape taped, you're going to take a look at your board, your work surface, kind of place it where you want it to be. You'll tape it down. working the tape, making sure it's as flat and smooth as possible. Once you're done with that, what you're going to do is take your Sharpie marker and just trace along the outside of your shape. I like to do that so that if I get some crayon inside of my shape, I have a firm line, a real good line to work with to know where to paint. Once you complete that, we'll get into the fun stuff. All right, we've moved on. We've got our shape firmly taped down, even his legs and his ears taped down really well. I've traced the outline with a Sharpie marker, and we are now going to start melting our crayons. Really important before we start melting crayons that we have enough newspaper down, you have a paper box, cardboard box to put your project in, because the paint will splatter, or the crayons will splatter quite well. The next thing to do, roll up our sleeves. We really need to make sure our sleeves are rolled up so we don't get crayon and eventually paint on them as well. So we'll roll up our sleeves. I have both the heat gun and the hairdryer plugged in so I can show you how both of them will work. It's important when we start our project to make sure that everything's set on the right temperature and to be very careful. Both of these, the heat gun and the hairdryer, forces hot air out. Very important not to touch the tips of either one of these or get your hands underneath them while you're using them. Very important, have an adult with you when you're working on this project. So when we get started, we're actually going to start with our darker color first. And when I'm melting the crayons, I actually like to stand over the project so I can see and direct where the crayons are splattering to. So what we're going to do is we'll start with our darkest color, and we're actually going to work on some grass. I have 3 different shades of green here. I have 3 different shades of blue. And I grabbed a pink just maybe to add some flowers. We'll see how it melts. So we're going to start with the grass first. And I'll start with a hairdryer. I'm going to turn it up to high. Then what we're going to do is just hold the crayon kind of at an angle and put the heat on it. The hairdryer does take a bit longer to get started. And for those of you that know me know that patience isn't my best virtue. But just start angling it, your crayon will start melting, will start splattering. Now, it's important to hold your crayon kind of at an angle because you can direct and control the crayon a little bit more, but it also gives a nice drop to it. Now, we did run the hairdryer for a little bit. If you can see, we have just a little bit of the dark green here. I'm going to switch over to the heat gun. It's really important to start with your darkest colors first. If you start with your lighter colors, you're going to drop the darker colors on top of them and not really see them all that well. So I'm going to crank up the heat gun. And this is actually going to go a lot faster. The heat gun tends to be a lot warmer. That's why we ask that you have a parent around when you do this. Just kind of keep it moving. Now, when the crayon hits your surface, it will be warm for a while until it cools off and dries. Also, while it's wet, you don't really want to pick it up and angle it at all, so leave it flat on the table. You will be able to tell when the crayon is dry. It won't look as wet. The waxy type color pattern will come back to it. So it's up to you how much color. When you're done with the color, just set it on your work surface because the tip is still wet. Move to your next darkest color. As I add colors, I like to go a little bit higher so that I'm not necessarily pushing them with the heat and making them move. And you're just going to continue to drip color onto your pattern. Get it all over your picture. It will not soak through the paper. That way you can really get your colors all over and not have any blank spots. Once you're satisfied with that, move on to your third darkest color, or your second lightest. And just start dripping. You may want to work from one side to the other, and when you start the other color, start on that side that you first started with so that the colors are a little bit drier. They may not blend quite as well. Or you can just stop the whole process, let everything set and dry, and begin with your next color. Turning down the heat on the heat gun or the hairdryer works as well. Alright, so we're halfway through my picture, and what I want to show you, and I'm not supposed to be doing this because I'm going to hold it at an angle, I have the green grass started for my picture. So I'm going to lay this back down. I'm actually going to turn it around so that I have a better surface to work on. And I'm going to start with my sky. And I'm actually going to start with the darkest color blue I have to create my sky. It's very important to watch your fingers when you're doing this. Make sure you hold those crayons out at a good distance. Also use big enough crayons. If you have some that are broken, that's okay. You can use those too. Just don't use tiny, tiny little pieces. Moving on to my next darkest blue. And not all crayons melt the same. You're going to find that there are differences in brands. Colors are going to be a little bit more vibrant in some of your more expensive crayons versus your less expensive crayons, but all of them melt really well and can complete this project. If you wanted just one color, you could do that as well. I tend to like bright colors, so I'm going to put a lot of color in mine. Moving on to my lightest shade of blue. Alright, and that completes the sky portion of my picture. Now I have to decide, do I really want to add little pink flowers to my pasture or not? I'm going to kind of turn my picture around, take a look at it. I'll show you guys. Hopefully you can see it. Now remember, these are going to be warm. The heat is absorbed by whatever medium you're working on, whether it be your wood, canvas, or cardboard. Oh, another good tip, don't get your crayons too close to the end of your heat gun or your hair dryer because you will kind of burn them onto the end. So for this, I'm going to add just a few pink flowers if I can. Just to give it a little bit more color. We're going to let it set for a minute, let it dry. Now what I want to show you is to complete our next step of our project, we're going to actually take our shape. This is an umbrella one I started at an after-school program. I just peeled the umbrella right off, and what we're going to do is start painting on our in our shape. Now, this picture here, I did get some crayon inside the handle of my umbrella. It will take paint. It's just going to take a lot of paint to cover over the crayon. Crayons are made of wax, right? They're kind of resistant to all of paints and having stuff soak in. I promise you though, if you put enough paint on, it will cover it. So, to get started on this one, what we're going to do is give our paint a good shake, make sure it's mixed up nice and well. This is where you can use your yogurt cup. I like to have a bunch of different sized brushes with me when I do this project so that you can use the bigger brushes to fill on the inside of your shape and the finer ones to work along your edges and in small spaces. So what we're just going to do, I'm just going to paint out of the bottle today. I'm not going to pour any into the cup. I'm actually going to paint out of the lid. And what I'll do is I'll show you, I'm going to start at the handle where I had a lot of melted crayon and see how we do. I don't know if you guys can see this at home. I've got the video timer in my line of sight right now. But we're just going to go along the edges and add our paint. Again, you should be working over newspaper. Easy cleanup. Water-soluble paints, also a great idea, especially if you do get it on the table or on your clothing. I did not trace this with a Sharpie to begin with like I should have, but the pencil line is still there for me to see. So what you're going to do is just fill in with your black paint or your paint of your choice that complements the colors that you melted, and then just fill it in and complete it. Now, when you're done with this project, what do you do with it? Some of the nicer ones that I like to save or I have seen kids made, I encourage them to just go and get a black frame, 11 by 14 opening to put their pictures in as well. You don't have to frame it, but if you want to save it, that's a good idea. These are also really cool fair projects. They are under the Arts and Crafts section in the Shenango County Fair book. So if you do a really cool one and want to enter it, we do have a class for that as well. So this is Melted Crayon Art, and I hope you had a great time learning how to do it and that I see a lot of these projects at the county fair this summer. Yes, we are still having county fair. We are not canceling that. I promise you that. Have a great day, Shenango County 4-H, and we'll talk to you soon.